This episode of Going Forward is brought to you by Optmyzr, an award-winning PPC management tool used by advertisers worldwide. Save time and boost the performance of your PPC campaigns on Facebook, Amazon, and Google or Microsoft. Get a 14-day free trial at optmyzr.com/go/VIP.
Welcome to Going Forward, where inspiring conversations with leaders and entrepreneurs shape tomorrow. Dive into the depths of their journeys, the hurdles they've overcome, and the insights they bring to the future. Let's get moving right here, right now on Going Forward.
Man, I'm excited to talk to this guy right here. I am so damn excited to talk to you today, man.
I was just vibing on those tunes, mate. I'm loving that intro, man. Crikey.
You do. Well, it's a good friend of mine. He does things all over the world. His name is Rick Party. He's got an amazing voice too, man. So
yeah, fantastic.
I'll make sure I get you set up. But I'm fanning out right now because I got one of my favorite people on the line. Don't you laugh at me, James, damn it. His name is James Martin. The world may know him as Made by James. So I want to welcome you guys, all of our listeners, to a new episode of Going Forward. My name is Eric Elliott. I'm going to be your host today on this little crazy ride that we're going to have. I lead the teams at VIP Marketing, a digital agency serving law firms, and also Craft Creative, a premium video production company. And today we're going to talk to none other than James Martin. James, if I had like one of those buttons to give you like an applause, I'd do that right now, man. So
I'm clapping myself, so it's all good. It's all good.
James, I'll tell these people just a little bit about you that
Sure.
I know, and then you can tell them the rest, man.
Of course.
James is going to be my guest today. Like I said, he's a designer, he's a creative agency co-founder, and also of Baby Giant Design Company. We're going to talk about that today, and also the book of The Honest Guide to Creativity and Logo Design.
Sure.
I want to talk about all about that because when I started diving into you more, I got a lot of this Rick Rubin feel. You know what I'm saying? I got a lot of this.
You are not the first person to have said that, and what an honor that is, because I literally started about halfway through his book right now.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah, really good. But yeah, that means that's one hell of an accolade you can give me. But yeah, I mean, just another dude trying to make his way in a crazy world. That's what I put myself down as. A little bit of effort.
James, a lot of people, they may have seen you like online, Instagram, YouTube, and all these other things. But a lot of folks didn't know you started out like doing tattoos, man. I mean, tell me about that, because people used to tell you, man, you're a tattoo artist, you'll never get a real job and all this other stuff.
Well,
tell me about that, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hitting. It's my 40th birthday on October the 30th this year. Do you know what I mean? So I grew up in a world where being any sort of creative wasn't, it was a hobby. It was a hobby, and you go and get a proper job and you draw on the weekend kind of thing. So so I mean, I grew up, being told that I'd never make any money out of art. Like it's not a proper career, and I don't know how deep we'll get, but I'm happy to go as deep as we need to on this conversation. But like,
let's go deep.
Yeah, for me, like it was, art was always like, so kind of growing up, I was never particularly bright. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't say I was classically bright for the school, so I wasn't very good at math or like the languages or the sciences, but I was always like, I wasn't the best at art or design or like, what do you used to call it? Carpentry. We used to do stuff like that. So I was very much better with my hands than I was with my brain. And I think, like, since I've found out dyslexia and all the rest of it now, so that was probably a lot of the key contributors to that. But, like when I was younger, unfortunately, I was sexually abused by my teacher at the age of 11. And that kind of catapulted me into a world of carnage, drugs, alcohol, was kicked out of school, kicked out of home, all before the age of 17. So ultimately it went and ruined my life for a couple of years, continued to do drugs and drank too much. And, you know, had far too many girlfriends upon girlfriends upon girlfriends. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just like I was in turmoil. A lot of the stuff I did was bad. But luckily, like, the reason this is a long story, but the reason
this is your time.
I'm going to get to where we were going to get to. This is what my brain does. It does this, but I think it's important to have the picture so we can understand stuff. So obviously, basically what I did was I woke up one day after a massive kind of drugs binge, you know, all-nighter, and I thought, like, what on earth am I doing in my life? And I realized that I needed to change. Something needed to change. So I enrolled I had no qualifications. I didn't have anything. So I had some like GCSEs, which are like the grades you get like when you're 16. I think it's a little bit different over in the UK than it is to the States, but blah, 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 blah. But basically, I went and enrolled and did an art foundation. You know, the only thing I trusted at that time was art. It was the only place I felt safe. It was the only thing I thought I could possibly make a career. All I was trying to do at that stage was just be distracted from drugs, alcohol, and crime, ultimately, at that stage. So Art Foundation led me to graphic design, HND, and then I never, you know, for me, it was just a stepping stone. Like even up until, you know, even before I started my agency, I was like, I don't know if I want to be a designer. But, you know, ultimately what happened was, like, all the way through this, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be a tattoo artist. Do you know what I mean? So maybe I'll go and teach art, you know. So I did all of these things before I committed to kind of the design world. And after I kind of did the tattoo apprenticeship and went and taught art at a school for a year, I realized that those two things weren't for me. So then I decided to kind of lean into this kind of graphic design world. Found like a junior design role at a creative agency, stayed there for 3 to 4 years. My brain's a little bit fuzzy, but then ultimately started Baby Giant. And now, 13 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you. So that is kind of like the journey from, you know.
Everyone's got a story, but I'm going to tell you something. You know, we're going to get into interviewing and stuff like that, but, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like listening to you, because it's like you're going to put it all out there. But I want you to really congratulate yourself for not giving up on you.
Thank you.
No bullshit, because if you gave up, you would not be such a positive influence on a lot of people, not just in the UK, but in the US as well, too. So I got to tell you, man, thank you for not giving up on you, because you have no fucking idea how many people you're inspiring right now. And I would guarantee you that a lot of people don't know your struggle and they don't know your story, man. So just thank you for sharing that, man. And thank you for being you, brother. Okay.
No, I appreciate that. That means, I you know, it's, I share my story so people don't feel so alone in theirs. You know, I think we're so much more than our work. You know, I think especially with the rise of social media, the highlight reel, we've all fallen into this trap, and me included, of like creating content that appeases an algorithm. You know, creating content that you think other people will like, whether they're your audience or not. And it's something that you know, I try and stay true to, is that, you know, we are more than the things we create. You know, we are more than our kind of output. You know, we are, you know, especially when it comes to design, even, like, my ideas are more important than the things that I come out of my ideas. And like, as I said, like, I believe that I have more to offer the world. I don't want to be known as just a designer. I want to be known as something more than the things that I do, obviously. So, yeah, for me, you saying that is a great energizer, because sometimes it can be quite lonely showing up.
Oh, it is.
So,
how did you know, like, you had something? How did you know? Because I mean, it's like it's hard for you. It's hard for people, especially a creator, designer, whomever it is, to be able to get that confidence to say, "I know I have something. I'm going to go after it." How did you know when you had that it?
I think you know, it's difficult because it's not something that just happens. You know, I think things like understanding your purpose are a reward for patience and a reward for perseverance. You know, like I said, like, even when I started the design world, I didn't really think I was going to end up being a designer, but I just stuck at it. And you know, I think over time, like, my purpose has evolved. My understanding of myself has evolved. My confidence in myself has evolved, and I think that's a big one. Is I understand the more I am myself, the better my life gets, and that's not just, you know, transactional clients, money. That's also relationships and the people that are around me and the things that I'm doing. I've always been very proactive about my opportunities. I don't sit and wait for stuff. If I want to go, and I got my first speaking gig by reaching out to somebody who did speaking gigs and said, I'm going to fly over, I'll pay for my flight, get me on that stage. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So, you know, and like the opportunities that I have now with like Chris Do and, you know, other like legends of mine, like some
Chris is a great he's a good one, man. We've talked before too.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. And I reached out to him and said, look, I want to lean into helping people as much as I can. Like, how can we do something together? And he's got me speaking at his booth at Adobe Max. We're launching a course together. You know, I've got to go on lives with him. And like, do you know what I mean? So like, these things wouldn't happen without me asking for them. And I think that's a big thing. If I want to leave one little thing about this little thing we're chatting about is, like, I think people sit on their butt and wait too much for something
to come to them,
to happen to them. And it's right. You know, like the best things that have ever happened to me are, you know, apart from my wife and, you know, my son, you know, I think our opportunities that I've made myself, I've made them happen by actually putting myself out the line, willing to get a no. But, you know, I'd much prefer to get a no rather than sit here thinking, oh, I wish I just tried that. So this is why, like, when I think about purpose, like, you know, and like I've got this big vision to offer free design education to the world. That's my big vision. You know, there are so many things I have to do to make that happen, but I know where I'm going. And the good thing about knowing where you're going is that you can make a plan to get there.
Yes.
You know, what they say is like, you know, think in decades, plan in months, execute daily. You know, that's the kind of that's the kind of play. So I know exactly what I want to do. I now just need to do the things I need to do to get there, and that I know is not going to happen tomorrow. So, you know, and like for example, like leaning out to Chris, leaning out to these people who run speaking gigs, like getting me on stage allows me to have a platform. Right. To share this vision with people. So kind of a long way round, but obviously over time, this purpose has become more, I've gained a lot more clarity. Obviously being sober for 2 years is, you know, I'm not addicted to drugs and alcohol anymore. It's just awesome. Work or purpose, we can call it. It won't kill me as quickly, but, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? So, but, you know, this idea of like, I've got so much clarity about the person I want to become now, which makes my purpose, you know, like feel achievable. I don't feel like I know that I am the only person getting in the way of my own success. You know, effort is free. I've just got to get up, work hard every day. Some days are better than others. Some days are wins, some days are losses, but just keep stacking them up. I'll get
absolutely there. So, but you know, you mentioned like Chris Do and talked about purpose just now. So, is there anyone who's like influencing you right now? That is like, you know, they're throwing the coal inside your engine to keep you going. Who's influencing you right now?
It's a great question. So there's something that always goes around in my head, and this kind of applies to like anything. You know, I only take advice from people who are where I want to be. So when when you put work out online and somebody slams it, somebody says bad stuff, somebody disses you for this or disses you for that, or just say to yourself, are they where I want to be? And if they're not, just ignore them. I think Brené Brown also speaks. She said this one thing that's always resonated with me. I think it was in her TED talk, which was, if you are not in the arena getting your ass kicked with me, then I'm not going to listen to your opinion. Do you know what I mean? So, because there's a lot of people, the noisiest people, the biggest trolls online are the people who aren't showing up for themselves, let alone showing up online for other people. So, that's kind of like, as I said, that kind of advice thing has really kind of, again, given me great clarity. And like I only listen to people who are where I want to be. And like Chris Stowe is one of those people. My good friend, like Dan Jansen, is one of those. He owns Lincoln Design Co.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he is somebody else I look up to. He is what I would consider my design hero, because when I was starting up Baby Giant and Made by James, Made by James was an accident. It's just kind of snowballed into what it is. But especially my design agency, it was like, you know, success leaves clues. And I just watched Lincoln Design Co. They were doing all the work that I would love to have done. They looked cool. They were unapologetically themselves. And I watched them from afar and just thought, like, you know, like I said, success leaves clues. So like, it's not to copy them. It's just to kind of see what works. Like, why do I like them? Right. You know, when we talk about things like brand personality and brand story and brand identity, like, for me, like, they had their own identity, you know, like even things like, you know, whenever they went on their own retreat within their own setup, within their own office, their own crew, they would still create like this wicked visual identity for it. They would still put so much effort into the stuff that was theirs. Like, and I think that's kind of what happens within the design industry now, is like, you know, and something I've learned not to do is like, we spend so much time building identities for others that we start to lose our own a little bit.
We forget who we are.
Yeah, exactly. And
totally get it. Totally get it.
Yeah. We don't work on our own website. We don't work on our verbal, our visual identities. And, you know, we get left behind. And that's something that I learned from Dan and the Lincoln Design Co. team, was like, never stop working on your own personal brand.
Treat yourself like a client.
Yeah, I'm my best project. You know, my Baby Giant and Made by James has got me more work than any of my client work will ever get.
Wow.
You know, people look at me and they go, I don't want what you've done for yourself, but you clearly understand how to build a brand. You clearly understand how to market yourself. You clearly understand how to build a visual identity. So this is this thing about walking the walk and talking the talk, isn't it? Yeah. It's like there are so many people selling stuff that they don't do themselves, which is the biggest problem online. You know, there are visual brand strategists with no strategy. There are visual identity designers with just a logo and not a whole design system. Right. You know, there's so many people trying to sell things that they don't do themselves. So, and that's the reason why clients are paying people, because they're going to look at you and go, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to pay you to do it for me when you don't execute.
You can't do it for yourself.
So, exactly. So
it's funny you said that. You know, I actually sent Chris a message one time before too. I think I tagged him on something. I said, you're probably the only one that I'm going to like really believe when they say that. And here's why. I'm going to tell you my reason for that is because there are so many people online right now screaming, I'm an idiot, buy my course. I'm not an idiot. I'm an expert, buy my course.
Yeah.
I'm an expert, buy my course. And I'm an expert, buy my course. And a lot of them, you know, they got like a ClickFunnels page and they're just luring you in, trying to sell you something. Do you believe, my belief is it's like marriage. You don't invite too many people into your marriage and your business. I think you don't invite too many people into your head. Because the minute you invite too many people in your head, you lose track of who you are, man. Because you're trying to be everyone else that you're listening to.
Yeah, and that's I mean, that is not anybody's. That's social. I mean, I personally don't believe that there's anything wrong with social media. It's done me great. It's allowed me to build my business. So the problem is there's certain people on social media who make social media shit. Do you know what I mean? And there's also let's be honest, especially like Instagram, you know, for me, it's not social media, it's a marketing platform, you know, and I think for a lot of other people, it's a marketing platform. It's not you know, what it used to be circa 2010. Do you know what I mean? It's very much evolved into a marketing, selling platform. And some people, I believe, take that too far. So, but again, you know, it's kind of an interesting, I find it like, I understand that people just do things in different ways. But I also like, if somebody has built a course and they are kind of actively trying, there's also this side of me is like, well, at least they're trying to better their lives. At least they're trying to do something. Point.
So as long as they're selling, to me, as long as they're selling to help and not just selling to sell.
Yes, I mean, that is, and unfortunately, you often don't know the result until you've already bought. That's the thing, isn't it? And I think this is why, even like with clients, with designers, with whoever it is, like this is why I think it's really important to research, you know, and actually kind of like people now equate like this number or this blue tick to trust. But I also know that there are people who have huge audiences with no work. Do you know what I mean? They just had one reel that went woof, and then they grew like 300,000 in a year. But you know, their skills don't match their audience size. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is a bit of an issue now. So whether you're a client, whether you're a designer, I think it's always important that you research the people that you're learning from or you're wanting to work with, because I never name names, but I would say 90% of the designers on Instagram, for example, are sharing work that they've made up. None of it's client work. It's work that they've made up to try and get work. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's important to keep evolving your skills, but it's no wonder that clients get let down, because it's very different making up your own brief than it is to executing like a real world client brief. So if you are a client, you know, don't take, I think there's so much face value, right? They've got 20,000 followers, or they must be trustworthy, or 30,000 followers, they must be trustworthy. And look at all this work they're sharing. They must have loads of happy clients, but none of it's real. You know what I mean? But like I said, like that's not,
it's gold plated.
Yeah, exactly. It's not to, I mean, it's easy to come up with your own brief and smash it, isn't it? Because it's made up. Do you know what I mean? But it's very different executing that in the real world with real applications, like defining positions and strategy. It's like, it's no wonder that so many clients, like there's this barrier, do you know what I mean? Clients and designers, there's this constant barrier. Like clients, you know, don't want to pay money, like, well, not all clients, but there's this kind of like, we could go and do this ourselves. And designers like, well, I don't get paid enough. And there's this constant kind of barrier. But I have found by like what we talked about, by showing up, building trust, but not just building trust, like aligning that with, you know, aligning my audience with my portfolio, with real world client work, with being an author, with associating with the right people. And you're like, you know, some people just grow an audience and then just do paid ads. You know, that's great for them. It's not it's not something that I would personally do, because it doesn't really align with who I want to be as a brand. But you know, this idea of like, you know, there are people like with different motives for doing different things. But like I found, like clients will happily pay me good money because there's all these touch points. You know, there's testimonials, there's real work, client work, there's the audience, there's the book, there's the association with other people, you know, there's the agency, there's blah, 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 blah. So these like, there is work out there for the right people. So I think designers sometimes have to also take a little look inside. It's like, well, people aren't paying me, or I haven't got any leads, or I haven't got this, that, or the other. You know, sometimes you have to take a little look inside. You know, that's, you know, if you've got the good work, but you haven't got any, that's a marketing problem. That's a effort issue in some other space within your business. So yeah, it's such an interesting topic to kind of social media. Do you know what I mean?
It is, because you know, I think, you know, like I said, like you said earlier, I do like social too, but it also it makes a lot more noise out there.
Oh, very noisy.
And I think, you know, like the brands who are looking to hire, or people who are interested in learning from someone like you, you're forced to do a lot of research because you really don't know, because everyone on social, they're presenting to you what they want you to see.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, they can smash their own discovery project and all.
But content is powerful. Like if we'll just finish on, like I worked out that I've been posting for like 600 weeks. Okay, so roughly on social media, on Instagram especially, I think it's like just under 600 weeks or something in and around that. And I reckon I was doing some maths. So I reckon on average, let's say I do 10 hours of content a week. So that's 6,000 hours of content I've done over the last decade. And if you think there are on average 2,000 working hours in a year.
Yep.
So in a decade, I have done 13 years of work. That is bonkers.
Wow.
But
that's some math, man.
So I've done 3 years of extra work on top of my full-time job.
Yeah.
As you know, and that is the difference between 500,000 followers and 10,000 followers.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that, I only worked that out yesterday, and I was like, I need to change some shit up. I need somebody else to help me with my content now. So this is what I did.
That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time.
I mean, I've got now, this is the other thing. You look at like the kind of the biggest content creators on the planet. They are either they're not married, they don't have kids, and or they get help. They have a cameraman following them, or they get, if you're churning out that much content, you're in what I would consider those two brackets. Not as many commitments, real life commitments, probably no mortgage, probably no family. Probably no husband or wife, probably. I'll say this is very generalizations, but from what I can see, or like I said, you look at your Gary Vee's, your kind of, some of like your big content creators, is just camera following around. Somebody else is posting that.
Yeah.
Posting. I mean, that was obviously a lot of work still, but so I think for me, I'm now shifting into this. Like my priorities are changing. I want to create, I'm not going to be remembered for the size of my Instagram audience. I'm going to be remembered for the impact I bring to my industry. So that is where my energy is now shifting. So I'm kind of getting a lot more help with the content. My video guy comes in once a month. We film the month's stuff. He gives it to me. I post it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than me spending 40 extra hours a month creating it now. So I'd probably just do 15 hours a month now. So,
that would be a lot of time taken away from your family too.
Exactly, yeah.
I want to bring up, I want to go back in time a little bit because not only, from doing the tattoos, you also worked for an agency before. And tell me, what was that like? What was that like when you were working, with an agency? And I say this because, I have a lot of creatives that work for us too. And the one thing that I definitely never want to do is keep the lid on the jar for our team. I want them to grow. You know what I mean? I want to be able to grow, and it's my job to be able to help them. You know what I mean? Sure. So what was that like for you when you were working at an agency, James?
So like fresh out of kind of uni, as I said, I was shit. I was good at drawing, but I was a shit designer. Do you know what I mean? I've still got so much to learn now, and I've been doing it for almost 20 years. So, I was lucky that they gave me a chance based on my creativity and my drawing skills. So, the one thing I loved about the design agency I worked at was that I did so many different things. Do you know what I mean? So I did a little bit of animation, a little bit of web, a little bit of logo work, a little bit of branding, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit. I mean, we were using Flash back then to animate.
Oh gosh.
We were using what was it, Dreamweaver or
Dreamweaver.
something to build websites and code and all this kind of stuff. So for me, frame by frame animation in Flash was just like, it's bonkers, to think about. But that's what I really loved about the agency. But what I also liked about the agency was like the hierarchy. So there was, I was at the bottom, there were people above me, and then there were the bosses, and there was this kind of natural order of things. And I think, you know, like this is why I always say to designers, like especially fresh out of uni or college, is to just try and get a design role at an agency. I know it's difficult. I know the world's changed and everybody's painting freelance life as this. Just be famous on social media and get paid to do that. Do you know what I mean? Which is, it's not the case. It's not easy to do that. But that's what I loved about it. I think the problem is now, like I said, people are leaving college, going to freelance and failing and then giving up because it's not easy. And also, like, I also think people are niching down to a.
They are.
You know, I think
they are.
You should not niche into a specific industry, doing a specific set of things for that industry in the beginning of your career because you're not good enough. You know, that's plain and simple. You're just not good enough. You don't have the skills. You don't have the ability. You don't have the human, like the communication element.
Or the experience. You know, it takes a lot 100%. Of experience to just say you want to just niche down, right?
Exactly. And I think there's obviously a lot of talking in our industry about niching or niching, whichever way you want to look at it.
Say niche.
Yeah, I say niche, do you know what I mean? But I say a lot of shit, I shouldn't say. So that's not a bad thing. But, you know, I think for me, it's like, that's why I always try and encourage, like, I know it's difficult. You know, I know it's easy for me to say, like, 20 years into his career, go and do this. But I think everybody's got to remember as well, like, even the people who have been done it for 20 years, you know, I mean, I started at zero. You know what I mean? I started at 0 followers. I had no job in my early 20s. I didn't have a fucking clue who I wanted to be in my early 20s. And I think you got to allow yourself that time. Like, I think everybody wants to be a success in this thing today, tomorrow. Like, if it's not happened in year one, this is what, you know, grow 100,000 followers in 90 days. Get your first million in 90 days. Do this in 90 days. Do this in your first year. And it's creating this grey, fuzzy cloud of self-doubt, lack of confidence. I'm not good enough. I'm obviously not as good as these people because these people have done it. And I think this is the big thing that I always try and do within, especially like my educational circle and the voice I try and bring online is I always try and speak very honestly about my career. You know, it's called a career for a reason. A career isn't 2 years, you know, long. You know, a career, if we're lucky, is 40 years in a particular kind of craft. So to think that you're going to have it nailed year 1 to 10 is ridiculous. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still figuring it out. Like, I think now, leaning into kind of year 18, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I want to do. But the beautiful thing is I have the confidence in myself. I don't have any doubt. I trust my ability. I've learned a huge amount about my industry. So now the things I want to do, I have all my knowledge on. So it's going to allow me to do that. That's what I loved about an agency was my ability, kind of going back to where we started, was actually the ability to learn a lot. And then over the years, I've kind of laser focused that. So, yeah.
And you know, that goes back to like what we were saying. It's like there's too much noise out there. And I think some people, like you said, they give up too early. They would give up way too early. And before you know it, like Simon Sinek said something like this. He said the problem with a lot of our young people now is like they're so good, they're so talented, but they want everything now. They feel like, you know, in 6 months or in 1 year, I should be here. And they're putting this timetable on themselves based on what they see online. And they're like, you know what, I need to quit this job because I'm not getting here. What, you were only here 6 months, you know, or you were only here 1 year. There's so much more for you to learn, you know?
This is why patience is like one skill. If you can learn to be patient and give yourself time, everything you ever want, you'll have. If you're not patient, you'll struggle.
you made a comment one time on I think it was Instagram, and you said you were talking about the process of humans and how important that is. I mean, tell me what went behind that post. So you were talking about like
I'm trying to figure out which one that was. I think I do have done a lot of posts, but I think like if I'm correct in saying, I think it was the one where I started off as a kid.
I think so.
Of growing up, so like for example, for the first year, like we can't walk or talk. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's interesting how in a rush, you know, like I think I said like 40 years ago I could walk, like 39 years ago I could talk, you know, and then 30 years ago I, you know, whatever. But I think this is why like perspective is such an important thing, you know, because we all started at a point, and there were all points in our lives where we couldn't do the things that we can do now. We forget, you know, I've been walking now, luckily, thank God. You know, I know some people that's not always the case, or they don't have the ability from birth or whatever. But, you know, I've been walking for 40 years. I've got it down now. You know, I also know how to talk. But there was a point when none of us could talk or none of us could walk when we were young. So, and like this sense of this ability to, like, think about how quickly we learned when we were younger. We would play, we would try things, we would jump off things, and we would like use our the boxes that the toys came in were more exciting than the toys themselves, because we could create these worlds. And that's something that I'm always trying to lean into with my world, is like never trying to lose that. Well, I'm obviously a grown up, but I'm always trying to like never lose that sense of childish creativity, you know, like, and I think that's what allows me to see the things that I see, because I still am this kind of young kid playing in a box. You have to
be free, you know, you have to be free and allow. Rick Rubin talked about that in his book about being childlike, you know, like the children don't know what's impossible. You know, you tell an adult to do something, the adult's like, oh, that's impossible. But to the kid, it's like, no, it's possible, because they don't close off their mind. So what you just said makes so much sense, man.
Yeah,
it makes so much sense.
I need to continue reading that book.
But
yeah, I mean, for me, it's I think we're also told to grow up, get a job, you know, got responsibilities, and I think we all fall into this kind of pattern: wake up, go to work, pay the bills; wake up, go to work, pay the bills, and that's something that luckily, like I've always not necessarily rebelled against. I've just spent enough time having those moments, but knowing that it would get better. And like I stayed in the thing that I love doing, rather than went and got a job that would have paid more for the first 5 years, or done this or done that. Like now I'm living the dream. I get paid to draw. I get paid to help people. I get, you know, my clients, I see like I do work for my clients. They pay me really good money to do that. Then I get to create content out of it. I'm like, this is the fucking dream. I'm getting paid to create content that's going to help other designers now.
Right.
Like, it's the framing of it all, isn't it? Like, it's like fucking bonkers. Do you know what I mean? I drew all day, and I was like, fucking hell.
That's awesome, man. What is a good environment to keep creatives in? You know, like you said, you get to do work that you love, but what's a good environment to be able to keep creatives in and keep them going?
I think that there's a few things. Like individually, I think people have, like, I work in this office by myself, do you know what I mean? A lot of the time, like Baby Giant crew, there's for me, AD, George, Lauren, and my wife kind of helps me, but we're all kind of remote. We all chat online, obviously, but we kind of work remotely. So I think individually you have to be driven. But, you know, the biggest thing that I have found that has kind of catalyzed my kind of personal growth, business growth, and all the rest of it is I got rid of a lot of what I would classify as dead wood. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'll explain. Like I surround myself with very positive, driven people now.
Wow.
Whereas before, I didn't. And that, when we talk about environment, the people you spend time with, interact with, talk to, associate with, have been the key for me to grow to where I've got to, you know.
Got it.
But I had to get rid of some not necessarily get rid of them, but spend a lot less time with certain other people who are possibly always negative or, you know, not as driven, you know, as, you know, I'm very ambitious. Like I said, free design education for the world. That's pretty fucking ambitious. You know what I mean? Whereas lots of my other friends they're quite happy doing a job they don't particularly like because they get to drink on the weekends and it pays the bills and all the rest of it. So, like, I managed to shift my environment with reference to the people that I was spending time with. And now I get very energized because the people I spend time with are positive. They have my back. They celebrate my wins, which wasn't always the case with some of my other friends. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've had certain friends that when I said I had a book out, they laughed and said, "Oh, you're going to just talk about your book all the time now?" And I was like, "Oh, I need to shift something here." Do you know what I mean? This is not good. This is not good energy for me. So, like, this should be a very happy moment for me. And I feel bad. You know, I feel like I can't talk about it. So, yeah, when it comes to environment, I would say the people that are in that environment are the most important thing. Like I said, you can learn all the skills, you can get better at drawing, but like I've always kind of thought that, you know, I always say this always, I only know it because I know it, but not as many people do. So like, you know, you should have 3 people in your life, you know, somebody that you can learn from, somebody that you can teach, and somebody that's on your level. If you have these 3 people in your life, you will always be sharing, growing, and kind of giving, I would say. So like the person that you learn from, that's where your knowledge comes from. The people that you teach, that's where you give. And the people that are on your level, that's where you share. Do you know what I mean? And you share your ideas, you share your talk. And like I've found by continuously building these 3 things, you know, it's constantly allowing me to, you know, because, you know, what happens is we all get to a point in our career where we think we fucking know it all. Do you know what I mean? The kicks in. Anybody that says they've never gone through that, I think is a liar. Do you know what I mean? But I always like very wary of this diagram in my head, like somebody you can learn from, somebody that's on your level, somebody that you can teach, and like always seeking. And this could be, they don't have to be people next to you. They could be people online. They could be books. They could be anything. So that is really important, I would say, those 3 things.
I think that's awesome. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back. And I want to talk about branding, logo design, and the book. You got to talk about the book. Okay?
Sweet.
All right?
I'm excited.
This is Going Forward.
Hold tight, listeners. We're taking a brief pause. Going Forward, we'll be back shortly with more insightful conversations.
Hey, it's Eric here from VIP Marketing, and I want to ask you digital marketers something. Are you frustrated with your current PPC marketing campaigns? Well, I want to tell you about a tool that we use here at our agency. It's called Optmizer. You have the ability to get your reports up to date and make sure that you get alerts on them. You can even work into workflows as well. So if you're frustrated with your campaigns right now in the reporting systems that you use, I want to give you a 14-day free trial of Optmizer. Go to optmizer.com/go/VIP.
myself, my name is Hov. H to the O-V. I used to move snowflakes by the OZ. I guess even back then you can call me CEO of the ROC. Ho, fresh out the frying pan into the fire. I be the music biz #1 supplier. Fly it in a piece of paper bearing my name. Got the hottest chick in the game wearing my chain, that's right.
Welcome back to Going Forward. We hope you're recharged because we've got an exciting second half waiting for you. Get ready to dive deeper and be inspired. Let's keep the momentum going.
All right, listeners, I'm back with my man, James Martin. James, man, you dropped some nuggets, man. I like that trifecta you put there. Learn, teach, and people who are on your level, man. I love hearing the story, man. It's that authenticity and that you have. And I got a huge question coming up from one of my guys. He's real special to me. Real special to me. He's been on my team for about 2 years. He's in charge of our visual, like designs, our branding, and our logo. And he keeps us in check. And I truly, truly love this guy. And I remember when he came to us, no kidding, he was actually crossing off colleges on the wall, not colleges, but different employers who didn't give him a job. And then, he moved to Charleston where we are. And I remember one day he walked in my office, no kidding. And I'm going to tell you his story because he's such a fan of yours. And he said to me, he said, Eric, I don't want to just be a graphic designer, because we hired him to be a graphic designer. And man, he exploded, he let go and he started to learn. He started to listen. He would consume books. He would sit in on meetings and he just become this sponge, and he's still not done yet. And I just see so much more for him. And in me, I'm an old fart, man. I'm 44 years old, man. I can't be doing this forever.
You're making me sound like an old fart.
So I have to make room for these younger folks, man, to lead them, grow them, and teach them. But one of the things he wanted me to ask you, okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
You sure? All right. He said, tell me about how the switch came about in your design career from solely making logos and brand identities to focusing more on building educational courses and the value for other designers. Was this type of work more fulfilling for you, or was it mainly to help your agency grow? That's from Maximilian.
Wow, great question. Firstly, you say his name's Max?
Yeah. Oh, Max. You can call him Max. His name's Maximilian. Let's call him Maximilian. That's his name.
Well, make sure you give Maximilian my email address, and I'll jump on a free call with him. I'll give him some time, no charge, obviously. So I'd love to do that for him. So, secondly, what was the shift in my? So let's kind of talk about. We'll kind of talk about my career, because we went from like graphic designer to logo designer, visual identity to brand identity, and now, obviously, over the last few years, I've evolved into more of an educator. I would say, but I think. Obviously, like when we talk about patience and process and perseverance and trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do, I think that journey is really, really important. And we talk about niching. We've done that as well. So I started off as a graphic designer, doing all sorts of everything. Like I said, a little bit of animation, a little bit of web, a little bit of blah, 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 blah. I then, about maybe a decade ago, decided to niche down into logo design, but visual identity, but logo design. That was really what I was talking about, really what I was sharing, my thought process, the ideas I came up with, because I always tried to push the rule. I've always tried to push the rules with design and creativity. When everybody says a logo's got to be simple, I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to go and do something else over it. But I think there's, especially with visual systems and like design systems and responsiveness, there's ways you can get around simplicity and elements, all the rest of that. So yeah, so for me, like, I really leaned into logo design, and then evolved that you know, in tandem, like building out visual identities. So working on like colors, type choices, hierarchy, building out extra illustrative elements like icon sets or things that would go with the logo to help, you know, kind of, I think my job as a brand identity designer, kind of going all around here, but I think like the most important job, so I've got to narrate a story, I've got to define a position, I've then got to kind of establish communication, but then I've got to do one other very important thing, which is make 1, 2, and 3 easy and replicable for my clients, which are things like design systems, brand docs, and all the rest of it. But when we talk about establishing communication, which is like visual identity and verbal identity, like that's how, so I went from that logo design focus to, well, I mean, logo design is a part of visual identity, and visual identity are brand identity. So they're all a part of the same beast, so to speak. But what I've done is, as I've evolved, I've realized that being more intentional with my decisions helped my clients more. So the more I could do for them, the more intentional my thought process was, the results. So before it would be like, James, do a logo. And I go, yeah, I'll do a logo. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It was 10 years ago. Now somebody comes to me and goes, James, we want a logo. And I go, why? Do you know what I mean? So, and what that does is that changed the conversation to like, understanding goals, objectives, you know, what, you know, obviously the logo is probably not going to move the dial, you know, or what you want to achieve. So that why question is very, very important. I think that's kind of like, as I've evolved, like I said, that like I want to be more in like the work that I put out in the world, I want to be effective. I don't want it to just be beautiful. I want it to work. I want it to make my clients money. It needs to like kind of complete some objectives and satisfy some goals and connect with the audience. That's the main role. So obviously, like through learning all this information, when I was growing up, like in the design world, there was a lot of gatekeeping, and there's still a huge amount of gatekeeping. Not many people would share their prices. Not many people share their process. Not many people would share their ideas, their thoughts. And that's something with like Made by James I've always done. I've always, rather than hold on to it thinking people are going to steal it, I've always had this idea of like, if they do steal it or borrow it, it's okay, because they still don't have my brain.
That's right.
I mean, they still can't think of the things that I think of.
Right.
So I've decided, and I've leaned into this more and more and more, is this idea of like, I want to help people not go through some of the same things I went through, especially with pricing and with like my thought process. I'm always very open about sharing like how I come up with ideas. I always share my decision making. I always try and leave tips and tricks within my content. Like I've got a newsletter where every week I give away free knowledge. Do you know what I mean? I just like, this is like portfolio building, client building, contracts, whatever it is. I just give it. Give. I've always tried to give more than I get, you know, and I get a lot. So I'm trying to give back ultimately to the industry that saved my life. And I think that's where this educational side of me has kind of come in, is like, I love helping other designers. Like I get like the comments about the book, the courses that I do have out, or even the free content that I have out, you know, people go, I use this in my latest proposal, I took that idea and put that into my contract, or I used the contract that you gave away and it's really helped me get out of this sticky situation. And that for me, because the funny thing is, it's an interesting, like I've been very blessed with great clients. They're always super kind on the whole, but something happened to me quite recently, which kind of really, like, as I say, I use the word catalyzed a lot, but there's a lot of catalyzation going on right now. There's a lot of kind of clarity, but like, there's something that happened. Like I would wake, like I said, every morning to kind comments. Like also, I talk very openly about addiction. I talk very openly about sexual abuse, and I have like husbands and wives reach out to me via DM and tell me that my conversations that I'm having around these subjects are helping them communicate about certain things and all. And this for me is like this is where purpose is built, like this giving is built, because the more I do it, the more I realize, like I said, I'm more than the work that I create. So, but like the thank yous is this kind of great energy I get from designers.
Yeah.
Isn't always replicated from clients. Yeah, I have 90% of them are great, but some of them are just like, I'm just a number. I come in, do a job, gone. Not even a thank you. I've done my job and I'm off. And I'm like, why aren't I spending more time helping these people that truly care about me? And why am I spending? I've spent 20 years helping these people who don't really give a shit about James. Do you know what I mean? They like the work I do.
I'm with you.
You know,
I'm
love
totally
the work
with you.
I do. But these people, like, they need me. I think my voice in the industry, that, like I said, is, you know, it's difficult to know where to turn to, where to look to. And I'm not saying that I am that person, but I will always speak from my point of view. I will never tell anybody this is what you should do. I'll say this is what's worked for me. Do with that what you will. And I think that's the lens and the frame that I always bring into kind of my content is this is how I do it. Do what you want. Do you know what I mean? Rather than if you're not doing it this way, you know.
That's really good. Pretty much they can see the logo and it still didn't mean they got with what's in your head. It's almost like I heard one time someone said, you can watch plenty of Bruce Lee movies, didn't mean you know karate or kung fu.
Fuck yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
and it's true, right? So
yeah.
So it's safe to say, you know, it's more fulfilling for you to teach.
Yeah, so, it's something like I said, like I'm a lot older now. The evolution of James, like 4.0, whichever number I'm on now, is like very much leaning into somebody. Like I said, I want to give back to the industry that saved my life. That is my big mission, and that is helping, you know, free design education for the world. You know, it's tough to go to school. It's expensive, you know, and I want to get rich people to pay me to help people who aren't rich. That's what I want.
There you go. The Robin Hood of design.
Yeah, exactly. But everybody wins. Everybody wins. Do you know what I mean? That way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I totally get it, man. I think that's awesome, man. Let's talk about, like, you brought this up about the people, like the clients, you know, they don't give you as much as respect, not in those words, as the designers, but how do you help them to see value in what you bring? Is that difficult for you?
What, for clients?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was kind of, my brain lost that. So trying to getting clients to understand the value that I bring,
because you know, instead of them seeing you as a commodity, like, I want a logo design or I want some brand guidelines, how do you get them to see that value and what you're creating for them?
Yeah, great question. Now I listened properly. Sorry. I think it's really important to be able to articulate well the things that you can do for people. Like I said, like before it was, can you do a logo? Yes. Now I go for a lot more discovery, and I go through a lot more kind of intentional thought kind of processes and questions that allow me to find the problems. You know, my job is to find a problem and create a solution for it. Do you know what I mean? And figure out how I can move the dial for my clients. And you have to be able to articulate that to your clients. If you are just like, I think like in the early days of my career, I was very much an order taker. Do you know what I mean? Then I evolved into a problem solver. And now I like to call myself an adventure guide. You know, that's something that my good friend Sasha Strauss talks about, is like becoming an adventure guide for your clients. You know, this is like, you know, and ultimately, like breaking it down to brass tacks, like this is not a luxury. Like this is a business transaction. This is what I tell all my clients. Like the money you spend with me, it's my job to make sure that makes you 10, 20-fold over the next 2 years. So if you spend 20K with me, I want you to make 100 out of that in the next 2 years. So how can we put some, like, how can we understand this worth? You know, so this is why I like these clear goals and objectives at the beginning of the kind of the call are really essential. You know, I've had clients come to me and, you know, they'll go, I'll give them kind of some rough prices, I always ask for budget because I like to think that that's the best way I can bring the most value to people. So it's not to It's not to eat up the budget.
Right.
It's to say, like I always have a base price. There's a price I won't go below in my head. But if somebody comes to me and it's way, way above that, I'll go, okay, well, this is what we can do for that. You know, rather than just kind of doing the same thing for this. It's like, well, we can do all these things for this as well. So that's really, really important. But like setting out, like I said, these kind of goals and objectives, I've kind of got off on a tangent. I was talking about too many different things and I've confused.
No. You were talking. It's actually really good because you're talking about helping them to kind of see the value. And like you said, you went from order taker to ended up being a problem solver for them and helping them see that value in you by the problems you help them solve. You know, you want, if they pay you 20, you want them to make 100, you know?
And that's, I think that, thank you for bringing me back in. So this is the adventure guide, went off on a little journey by himself.
Hey, we're together, man.
Yeah,
we're together.
You're my brain that brings my brain back. But yeah, it's like, it's very important for me to like this, as much as this is a fun process, as much as this is a relationship that we're going to be building with the client and all the rest of it, like, this is a transaction. This is a business transaction. They want to know that the money they're going to spend with me is going to make the money. And I can prove to them that the money that they don't spend, how it can affect their money. You know, the reason that they've come to me is because something's not working.
Right.
You know, the only reason we're having a chat is because something's broken.
Right. Exactly. Something's broken. I mean? That's why they're like, hey, let's go. He can fix me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that comes from confidence. So when we're talking about trying to get the clients to understand value, like I said, I think that's where I've got to now. So like you reminded me exactly where I was. So people have come to me and they haven't quite got the budget. Let's say, well, I want this whole visual identity. I'd love this and I'd love that. And I've got $2,000. And I'm like, okay, that's, you know, way below budget. That's not going to quite work. But then I'll spin the conversation and go, okay, so let's talk about like some goals and objectives you have for your business over the next couple of years. And they'll go, well, I reckon in 3 years' time, we'll be turning over 2.5 mil, or we'll be doing 600K. And I'm thinking, okay, so, and you think $2,000 is going to get you to this number. And it's actually trying to give them a little bit of clarity in and around this transaction that's happening. Yeah. If we build out all this stuff and we get you consistent, we get your messaging consistent, we define your audience, we really hit that audience with power, we understand your position in the world, we create design systems, responsive logos, visual systems, verbal identities that allow you to communicate with this audience. Yeah. That is going to help. That is possible. If you don't do these things, you're never going to even get close to that number. Do you know what I mean? And that's where, like I said, like being able to articulate and put the client almost like, rather than them being, this is what I want, this is how much money I've got, it's actually trying to get them to understand the power of good branding, good brand identity, good visual identities, what that can do to their bottom line if they do it well and they invest in it. Like I said, this business transaction. So this value, you can only, you can only get good value from your clients if you prove you're valuable. Do you know what I mean? Ultimately, like we talked about, it's easier for me to sell stuff to clients because I can say to them that my brand identity's done blah, blah, blah this year. And it's only done that, my brand or my business has made this much money this year. And that has only happened because of this thing I built here, the system I built here, my ability to communicate. So I can give them, I can show them all the things that I've done to build this colossal business. And if they want a colossal business, you're going to have to do the same. You can't just spend $5 on a logo from Fiverr, sit back and watch the money roll in. Do you know what I mean? It's impossible. Yeah. But you can't convince everybody, and neither should you.
What do you think about some of those things? You bring it up, like I see Wix, they're doing like this $99 logo. You got people going on Fiverr. We have a client in one city, and he said we were creating a logo for something. Pretty much a whole brand guideline and everything else, because if someone comes to us and said, we want a logo, we're like, no, we're not going to do a logo. So he was like, I'll just go to this one company and, I pay $100. And that's why I wanted to ask you that question. Like, how do you help these people see this value? And you made a great point. They want to make millions, but spend that.
Yeah. But that don't we all? I mean, ultimately, that'd be the dream, wouldn't it? Spend nothing, make loads. That would be the absolute win. You know, I spend maybe 30 to 40 grand on my own business every single year, my own identity, coaching, you know, myself, do you know what I mean, to get to where I want to get to.
Right.
So, and that's somebody who can do it all as well. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I think investing in yourself is the best thing possible. But like, I've always there will be, you can think about it like shopping. There'll always be people who shop at the dollar store. There'll always be people who shop somewhere else at Harrods in the UK. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they'll go and, you know, and I think it like the reason that these things exist is because there's a market for them. And this is why, as designers, as agencies, as creatives, this is why our positioning and our marketing is so important, because if you are competing with Fiverr, you're going to lose. Do you know what I mean? If that's who you are positioning and you're fighting against, you are going to lose because they can do it. They've got that market tied up. But like, if you share your story, you bring your own intentionality to your process, you bring your own character, your own personality, you do work your way, like you don't have to have the whole pie. You just have to have a little slice of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think this is, you know, why it's so important. Like we've talked about this idea of like, if somebody comes to me and goes, I can just get this on Fiverr, I'm like, great, mate. Go ahead.
Go do it.
Go. I mean, I don't even get upset about it. Do you know what I mean? Like even people talking about like, oh, you know, because I very openly share my prices and like some of the projects that I've done. And people are like, oh, no wonder people are turning to AI. And I'm like, good for you, mate.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't that doesn't bother me anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like there will always be people who use Fiverr. There will always be people who use AI to build their stuff. But there will always be people and businesses and individuals and brands that understand the importance of unique, intentional design, which is what
I love that.
Yeah, which is what an agency or a freelancer can do for you. Because if you go to Fiverr, there's probably 700 people with the same logo as you, ultimately.
I've seen that before.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
In this one market, I've seen that before. The flooring guy had the same logo as the real estate guy, just different colors.
Yeah,
totally seen it before.
Yeah, yeah.
But how do you know? Yeah. How do you know when you've made it successful? How do you know when you did a good job, James?
In work?
Yeah, I mean, so like, how do you know when, like, okay, let's just say you put your everything into this brand designs. You brought up Howard's for Howard's. You did this big thing for Howard's. How do you know like that worked?
My final invoice was paid. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I said, I think at the beginning, you do set some goals and you set some objectives, which allow you to kind of understand the effectiveness of your work. But some of those might take time, might take years to go into fruition. So happy client is the most important thing for me. Like I said, like, you know, having my invoice paid is always a clear sign that it's gone well. You know, I like to, whenever I work with people, I like to think that I'd always be able to go for a beer with them. Like it's very, like the work I do is very intentional. It hits an objective, but this should also be a fun process. I'm not particularly corporate. I'm actually probably the opposite of that. Maybe for some, too far that other way. But again, like I'm not going to change the way I want to work with people. I talk to them like my mates. If I think they're wrong, I'll tell them. But I'd also like to think that if they think I'm wrong, I say to them, like, if you think anything that I'm doing is shit, just let me know. Do you know what I mean? Because that's like, as long as we're communicating, we're going to get there. If we don't communicate and we hide behind emails and we hide behind thoughts, you know, we're not going to get there.
Great point.
So communicating is the most important thing. But yeah, for me, you know, it's not necessarily like I've learned, you know, I always want to love the work that I do, but I also understand that I might not be the audience for that particular product or service.
point.
So sometimes I have to take my personal wants and needs out of a project to get it over the line. And, you know, so often it's not that I love the work that I do. It's just that the work I do, I know is going to be effective for my client in the long run. So yeah, their happiness, their audience's happiness is probably my kind of gauge for success, I would say.
I think that's something that people really need to hear more of, that, you know, you got to take your personal self out of the work that you're doing for others and not, you know,
It's not
be
easy.
so in love with it. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
As
It's not.
a
I mean, you got to think about
creative
it.
being,
Yeah, you're sitting with it. It's coming from you. It's almost like people feel like, well, they don't like me, or no, it's not you. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just that. All
Yeah.
right. So I'm going to wrap this up because, man, I could talk to you all day.
We'll do
So
an episode too.
We have to. So I got to ask you, what inspired you to write the book?
Zero inspired me to write the book, because the publisher reached out to me during COVID and said, do you want to write a book? And I was like, yeah, this sounds fun. Do you know what I mean? So like, it wasn't even an idea of mine. It wasn't even on the radar. I think it's something that as a creative person or as a human, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but it's always like a bucket list thing. Oh, wouldn't it be cool to have a book out in the world one day? But yeah, luckily the publishers reached out to me and asked me if it's something that I'd be interested in. Like, and you go through a process of what you want that book to be. And like, for me, I didn't want to bring out a book that was just, look at all this cool work I've done, and look at all these look how great I am, all this stuff that I've done. There's obviously some of the work that I've done scattered throughout it, but I almost wanted to create almost this little Bible for creatives that they could turn to. Like, they could be their best friend in the good times and the bad. So if they're struggling with negativity, creative block, or coming up with ideas, or, you know, trying to figure out like certain little bits, I've kind of left little tips and tricks and little paragraphs on my story and like how I've dealt with stuff. And I think for me, like, it was just important to, like I said, I didn't want it to be like this kind of self kind of grandeur thing where I just talked about how cool I was. I wanted to just kind of leave something in the creative world that helps people. You know, if they're feeling a bit down, they can find something in there that'll pick them up. If they're looking for inspiration, there's something that can help them. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of almost this kind of mismatch of brain dumps that I put in there. But it's gone down really well. Yeah, it's great.
What are 3 words that you would use to describe James Martin?
Ambitious, vulnerable, and honest.
Now tell me about James today versus James 10, 15 years ago, because you said you've been going hard for 13 years. Well, tell me about James today, and what would James today go back and say to James just 13 years ago?
Keep going. You know, you don't have to be perfect. I also say to him that you need to stop drinking. I'd also say to him, don't worry, you and your wife will have a kid one day. You know, it took me and my wife 8 years to have our first child. So, but everything, I've never been a big believer. All the things I've gone through, I have gone through because I'm strong enough to deal with them. It's just, I think they are also great parts of my story. You know, they're great things that make me who I am. You know, I've always been a big believer. Like today, I've got so much clarity and so much awareness of who I am, the power I have. I know what I want to do with my life. Back then, 13 years ago, I didn't know that, but I only know that through going through the things I've gone through over the 13 years. So, you know, I believe that everything, good and bad, has happened to me for a particular reason. And now it's becoming very clear. You know, who would have thought somebody who was sexually abused by a teacher would go into education. I wouldn't have thought that. Do you know what I mean? You know, so
wow, James,
gonna fuck shit up and change the world. That's my plan.
if we had the biggest audience right now and all these designers and creatives, this is going to be our parting words. What would you say to them? What would you say to them? They're hungry. They're looking for direction. They're confused. Some of them think they can do it. Some of them are doubting themselves. And some of them probably went through what you went through. And some of them are probably going through what you're going through. What would you say to them right now?
I would say to something that I have engraved on the inside of my ring. And it is, effort is free.
Damn.
You have the ability to get up and change your life. You have the ability to make good choices. You have the ability to work hard. And that's on you. That's what I'd say.
James, man, you've been a fantastic guest, man. Fantastic guest. Shout out that Instagram handle so people can find you, man, for those people who have not, checked you out or been on Instagram, and tell them the best way to find you and the website address.
Well, made.by.james. The beautiful thing is now I've been prattling around the internet for so long that you can just type in Made by James and I'll pop up everywhere, which is great. But yeah, madebyjames.com, Made by James on Instagram, but it's made.by.james. But if you put Made by James, you'll see me. But yeah, it's been an honor, mate. Thank you so much. And
you
like
as well,
I said,
man.
Number 2 is on the horizon. We'll have to do this again.
We got to do it, man.
I only scratched the surface, I think.
I'm going to make sure Max and I set up a call with you, man.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I'm really, I loved following you before, but now it's really good to kind of get a little more from you. So when I see the next post, I know some of what went behind it, man. And I really enjoyed my time with you. I really did.
Thank you.
I really did.
That means a lot. Vice versa.
We're going to let Mr. Rick Party give us an outro and just hold the line for 1 second for me.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. To our listeners, man, we just want to thank you guys so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate our podcast and share it with a friend. Every share, every comment, every rating propels us forward. For more content, insights, and updates, visit EricElliott.com. Remember, your journey, your story is what keeps us going forward. Until next time.
I want to thank you all for giving us your most valuable asset, your time. And also a huge thank you to our sponsors over at Optmizer. For all of you who are running PPC campaigns and you want to see how to do it better and get better results and actually boost the performance of your campaigns and save time, get a free trial at optmizer.com/go/VIP.